The other night I saw Star Wars The Last Jedi, and I thought I'd give some unpolished thoughts on the movie today, so there will be spoilers. Generally, my overall impression of the movie is that it was a few clever moments surrounded by tedium. The only really engaging stuff is going on between Rey, Kylo, and Luke. I think there's a few good scenes, like, for example, the scene where Kylo is going to fire on the bridge in which Leia is in, and he hesitates, and then some of the other ships fire instead, and you think Leia's dead, and it was really and obviously there's a Force connection between Leia and her son that's going on while that's happening, and you think, oh, looks like it looks like they did kill her off in this movie. Of course, it's really weird to have a scene like that in there if what actually happens is that she lives and then uses the Force to fly back to the ship in a Mary Poppins moment. It was so undignified. The only reason any of that happens is so that another character can replace her, this woman with purple hair who takes over. Can't remember her name. Sorry. There's lots of scenes like that. I mean, there's a big portion of the movie that's very boring. There's a big boring chunk of the movie where it switches back and forth on an exact sort of time frame between scenes of Rey following Luke around trying to convince him to train her and the fleet being bombarded, because they learn that the First Order can chase them through hyperspace and therefore they need to disable the tracker. Or at least that was Poe Dameron's plot, but then this woman with purple hair says, nope, you can't do that. So he tries to do that secretly using Finn and this new Asian character. I can't remember her name. Can't remember. Like, none of the new characters are worth anything. No one cares about the purple lady, and the other characters, this fat-faced Asian, can't remember her name, so I'm just going to call her fat-faced Asian. And the one connection is that her sister dies in the assault on the ships at the beginning. And she's kind of starstruck with Finn when she first meets him, and there's some chemistry between them, but I think it's really lame. And she has an entire subplot it's totally boring and worthless, and they need to sneak on board the ship, so they need a hacker, so they need to go to this planet, and they get caught, and then they get the hacker guy, and then they get caught again, and then he betrays them. It's just pointless. I think that ultimately you could say the movie ends on a hopeful and brave note, but thematically I would say it's one of the most cynical and nihilistic Star Wars films yet overall. For a good chunk of the movie, I felt like it was ripping Star Wars' heart out. You have this entire subplot where they need to go and get this hacker to disable this tracking device. And all that happens is they spend ages on this planet filled with war profiteers, and the hacker explains that not only does he sell weapons to Imperials, but actually to the rebels too, and it's all just money. Then you have Luke, who wants to end the Jedi, because in a horrible twist that ruins Luke's character, he was hiding the fact that the reason Kylo went bad is because Luke actually tried to kill him because he saw his dreams, or saw him committing atrocities in the future, or something like that. There's something really pessimistic about that in a way that other Star Wars movies have not been. Other entries like Empire or Revenge of the Sith have been dark relative to the other movies, but this one's got a really cynical core. It's not dark, it's cynical. I think this movie undermines the triumphalist Campbellian core of what Star Wars is supposed to be. I would have been okay if Luke wanting to end the Jedi was actually something to do with that grey Jedi theory where there was some superior middle path teachings that were better than the Jedi. But there was none of that in this. It didn't come to anything. Luke wanted to end the Jedi because he was depressed and guilty. it undermines Force Awakens too, because I thought originally in that movie that Luke was a bit of a weak MacGuffin, because there was no reason for the First Order to want to find Luke. He's not a powerful weapon or some amazing asset for Snoke. But there was one little line Han gave which said something about the secrets of the Jedi Temple. Now, if those secrets had amounted to anything, then that would have been something different. But this movie is even cynical about that. In the plot, Rey has a Force connection with Kylo, and she eventually comes to believe that she can turn him, so she flies off, and Luke's distraught about all that, and he thinks he's fallen to a whole new level of failure, and he goes to burn the sacred tree in which the Jedi texts were found, which he's never read apparently, but Yoda appears, ostensibly you'd think to stop him, but instead Ghost Yoda summons a lightning bolt which burns the sacred tree anyway. And then Yoda gives him a message about stuff that never mattered, and we actually learn by failing, and that could theoretically be good, but nobody actually learns anything in the entire movie, so I didn't see the point. So that just left me cold. It's just a confused movie. Later on, it's like there are a few good scenes. Some of them are ruined. There's a scene where Finn is going to sacrifice himself to destroy a laser cannon that's going to blow up on the base, and then everyone will die, but the fat-faced Asian collides with his ship because she loves him, and that stops that, and she says there's something like, there's still hope when we have love, even though the implied message of that is that we shouldn't make heroic sacrifices for that love, even though other characters do that. For example, the purple-haired lady and Luke. Luke sacrifices himself by using all his power to create a projection of himself to delay Kylo Ren while they escape. And redeems himself, I suppose, but not really. I mean, it's not like he stopped. It's not like he went and killed Kylo Ren. And I mean, he really is responsible for Kylo Ren. Really. I mean, he might have seen his future, but in a way he fulfilled that future, so by trying to kill him, he, set him against him. And you've got moments like that. Luke's encounter with Kylo Ren where he makes a force projection of himself. And it requires so much strain that it kills him. And it's actually a decent send-off in isolation, but it's saddled with the awful structure of this movie. That and the part where Kylo betrays and kills Snoke, that's right, they kill Snoke in this movie, are the only truly good scenes, I would say. Although Rey thought she could turn him, Kylo decides to keep being bad anyway, because the dark side and the light side and the First Order and the Rebellion don't matter, and we should all just end this because cynical nihilism, so it's bringing in that again. And that's not really Star Wars to me. So everything fails and the characters barely escape their cascade of failures at the end. I'm jumping about chronologically here, but that's just how this film feels. The plot to get a hacker fails, but the purple-haired lady's secret plot to send out unarmed transports to sneak down to the planet Krayt also fails, which is not surprising because this is the dumbest thing to do ever. Maybe if she'd listened to Poe Dameron and put more resources into the plan to disable the tracker, she wouldn't have needed to have done this. But she does, and it works, but then of course it stops working because of certain developments, and the First Order starts blowing up all their transports. So to stop them, the purple-haired lady with absolutely no character or charisma who we don't even care about decides to sacrifice herself by jumping to light speed straight at the enemy fleet. This results in a genuinely visually impressive sequence, which is a change, but it's a totally empty experience. That's what I describe this movie as, empty. But it's also a traitor to everything The Force Awakens set up. Star Wars is now like a favourite pet resurrected by an ancient Indian burial ground. It kind of looks like your pet, but there's nothing going on behind the eyes.